Welcome to another West Valley Mayoral Forum. I'm Michael Ryan, Vice President and General Manager for the community editions of the Arizona Republic, including those in the West Valley, which include Peoria, Surprise, Goodyear, Glendale, the Northeast Valley, and the Southwest Valley. During this next hour, we're going to be talking with three mayors in the West Valley about some of the big issues facing their communities and also the West Valley at large. They are Sharon Wolcott from Surprise, Georgia Lord from Goodyear, and Bob Barrett from Peoria. So let's start with you folks, and we'll start with you, Mayor Barrett. What's the state of the economy in Peoria these days, and are you seeing any positive signs?
Yes, we are. We are seeing an increase in sales tax revenue. Sales tax revenue makes up about 30 of your budget. So things are picking up. We are, as I said in the State of the City address, I'm cautiously optimistic. We expect higher revenues, but I don't want to run out and spend them real quick, because you never know if it's going to continue to gradually increase or whether the economy is going to come to a stop again.
Mayor Lord?
Well, I'm actually have to agree with the many things you said. We are seeing a rise in the economy. We're seeing a rise in our tax revenue. We have, and we've been very fortunate during this downturn to be able to continue adding jobs to the city. So we have been doing that all along. We feel very fortunate for that. So yes, I'm excited about this next year, because I do think the strength of the American people are coming through, and we're just going to do fine.
All right. Is the new mayoral kid on the block in Surprise? You just did your recent State of the City address. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing in Surprise?
Well, we're seeing the same trends as my two colleagues here, increase in sales tax revenues. Things are coming up. We are seeing good things happening all across the West Valley and the region. And certainly that translates to good news for the state of Arizona and for job creation. So we're seeing good things happening all across the valley. And as you know, each of us has a different challenge in our community based on what our past history has been. So in spite of good things happen, sometimes we've had some challenges along the way, and I addressed those in my my State of the City address this last week, that in fact we do have some challenges facing us in our budget this coming year.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that's been a big issue that you've had. How do you feel you're coming along and addressing some of the financial issues that preceded you as mayor?
I feel very, very positive and upbeat about it. The reality is we've been doing things without full knowledge of the foundational problems that we were struggling with as a community for over a decade. And really there is a cascading effect. When you don't correct an error into the next year, it has a cascading effect. And we've come to realize that there were more problems than we had originally thought. I had anticipated quite some time ago that these problems actually extended back beyond a decade, and in fact we have evidence that that is the case. So these are problems that need to be fixed. But here's the good news: we're not broke. We have about a $73 million budget. The issue is we need to spend smarter. And I've always promised that the taxpayers that we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that all of our very, very precious resources are focused on moving the ball forward for our community.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the economic development that's taking place. I mean, one of the big things that happened in the West Valley, it's taking place in Glendale, but there's probably a ripple effect throughout the West Valleys with the Tanger outlets coming to Westgate and helping that project along. Mayor Barrett, what are some of the things you're seeing from an economic expansions, or what people could be looking for maybe in the next year to 18 months?
We just got Maxwell Technologies just came in. They are starting their production line this year. Next year, they're going to bring their R&D, research and development folks out. That is, they're Forbes 100 or whatever it is. So they're a high-end scientific group. In addition to that, we've got the commercial core up at Vistanza, which is about a 500-acre core up there for commercial development. The developers are willing to donate 50 acres to the first company that comes in. We have regional hospitals talking to us about going in there. We have an exclusive negotiating agreement with Abrazo, which is a regional hospital group. In addition to that, we're talking to, oddly enough, Glendale Community College about bringing out and maybe starting a technical school that would specialize in medical stuff, such as phlebotomy, x-ray techs, and things like that. We're looking at that. We have 2 colleges, or possibly 3, that are looking to come into this downtown area. You're in downtown Peoria right now. So we're very optimistic about this. And we have the bioscience, the BioExcel, it come in, and we call it BioInspire. Now this is a incubator system whereby what they're going to do is you come in, you're a scientist, you know how to develop something, but you don't know how to market it and how to get clearance to the feds. So what they do is they come into into our incubator, and then they teach them how to market this and then get clearance from the feds. And one of the things they're talking about, trying to attract into our incubator, is a company that if you have diabetes, you have to prick your finger. Mm-hmm. With this one, it's a strip of paper and you just wipe your eye.
Oh, wow.
And if they can get federal clearance for that, then we hopefully we can bring them into the incubator, help them develop it, help them find venture capital, and then move out. Now we have room for, I think, 4 at a time, 4 individual startups at a time. In addition to that, we just talked to another company that's talking about coming in here, and they are, I forget what they call them, but when they do the biology stuff and micro stuff, and they put their hands to the gloves and then it's inside the case, it's one of those kinds of companies. And they'll come in, they'll probably start up with 4 to 8 stations, and then they'll build. And they are making medicines, and but it's not like penicillin. It's more the really critical, rarely used kind of medicines. So they will be coming in this year.
Okay. How about you, Mayoral?
Well, I have to say, what I'm hearing today is exciting because I know that's all the West Valley. Right. So we are growing. Well, we, as you know, during the downturn have been acquiring companies. So we have a solar cluster. We have international. We have Solar Arca, who does plastic carts, containers for the grocery stores. So we have the Chinese and the Germans and the Netherlands now. So we're very excited about having this international influx in our city. We, of course, as you know, we've have Sub-Zero has come out, and of course it's very exciting because the new 303 is what's attracting our new employers to locate in Goodyear, and we have Dick's Warehouse now, and we have several other companies that are right on the cusp of deciding to locate in Goodyear. The other part is that we're seeing a lot of the military side of the aeronautical side of it now taking effect. Companies are expanding around the airport. We're working in cooperation with Phoenix Airport on developing the Bullard corridor, the airport entrance to the into the airport. So we're excited about our potential that's going to come in the near future to Goodyear.
Okay. Mayor Wolcott?
Well, we too are experiencing some really good news with the growth of our businesses, and we have also focused on solar, the solar industry with Rio Glass Solar and Gestamp Solar Steel. Gestamp is now in the process of expanding their business, and so we're going to see new jobs coming online with that. Also, I can't stress enough the importance of the fact that we are now seeing dirt flying on the 303.
Isn't it nice? I love it.
This is a very big deal for us in the West Valley, and it is going to definitely spur an enormous amount of economic activity in the West Valley and for the valley as a whole. It's a tremendous opportunity for us, and so we're all excited. We're laying plans ahead. We're working together. And speaking of working together, another item that I think is going to have a real impact on helping grow business and opportunity in the West Valley is the Grand Avenue Corridor Charter. Absolutely. Because we recently signed a charter, the mayors along the West Valley corridor of Grand Avenue, all the way to Phoenix, have signed a charter with the with ADOT, with MAG, and with the Maricopa County, and we're looking at how we make that a more efficient corridor and how we repurpose that corridor. It's probably one of the most highly invested in corridors that's underutilized in all of Arizona. And we have tremendous opportunities to try to help bring manufacturing and high technology back to that corridor.
It was interesting because in the comments that were made, I think in your State of the City address about it being a multimodal use of it, where do you see, what type of transportation do you see on Grand Avenue, and all the different communities in line with what the thought process is?
Well, we've been looking, especially the city of Peoria and Surprise have been looking at commuter rail and working with Burlington Northern Santa Fe to start thinking about that, how we move the workforce up and down that corridor as well as moving freight. And Burlington Northern is very much of a willing partner working in that towards that end. So we've been looking at commuter rail as a possibility. Years ago, when we were thinking about expanding the width of Grand Avenue, it would have been a great time to be thinking about BRT. But now that we've done the expansion project, I think we need to be thinking about something else, because we don't have the natural place to put BRT would be in like a diamond lane that you've already reserved for the high capacity traveler. But that's not something that we have on the Grand Avenue corridor. It is something that we do have on the 10 corridor. There are a lot of opportunities for BRT.
And the 303. People what BRT
oh,
is.
I'm sorry. Bus rapid transit. It's almost like LRT on wheels. And it looks very similar to that. But it's in a designated corridor. And certainly 303 would be a perfect place to be thinking about putting BRT one day as well. So we're looking at transportation options, and we need to be thinking very, very carefully about how transportation can help drive economic development. And you have to be thinking about not just moving the product to market, because certainly logistics is a very important decision and one of the reasons why businesses locate near transportation infrastructure. But you also need to be thinking about how you move the workforce to the job.
Peoria signed the agreement as well. What was your thoughts behind it and how you see that's going to benefit Peoria and the West Valley? Well,
in addition to what Mayor Wolcott said, the other thing it is an economic development driver. For example, you've been to downtown Peoria. On the north side of Peoria at 83rd Avenue is essentially, used to be a Walmart. It's now a Pruitt's. It's a very large parking lot with a store. I'll be nice about that. But if that is a stop on that, then think about the development that will spring up around the transit stop. So anybody that comes in, you park, you get on the train and you go. Well, maybe you drop off your dry cleaning, maybe you shop on the way home. That's the big piece of it, I think, for Peoria. It's an economic driver. Plus, you get rid of the eyesore. All along Grand Avenue, as it goes through Peoria, it's an eyesore. I mean, there's no nice way to say that. I mean, the buildings are old. And what you need to do now is find a way to either get control of them or to help a developer to get control of them, and then take them all out at once and then put in something really good. And I think a rail stop is the key to having that happen.
I think people are always going to be interested. How soon do you think things are going to happen with this?
You know what? Everything depends upon political will, frankly, and the willingness to work together. Certainly, any fly in the ointment can stop things for a very long time. But in fact, look at how long we've been studying Grand Avenue for over decades, really. But now that you have the communities all along that corridor willing to work together and recognizing that there should be a unified vision on how we work together to make this a really well-functioning corridor, that is a huge step in the right direction. And in the long run, we are going to have help from our federal partners as well along this corridor. And we know that from experience that the dollar is short in Washington as well, but we want to do a better job of trying to get Arizona taxpayer dollars coming back from Washington, D.C. to Arizona, and making certain that we're focused on corridors that can really be the best bang for the taxpayer dollar. So, so Washington has been very clear with us. You need to partner. You need to bring multiple communities together. You can't all be out there asking for the same dollar 6 different times and not have a partnership. So we're working together to come up with a unified vision.
I think this is great because as it enters your cities, it moves out closer to ours and makes our vision and goal actually it shortens the time frame, because until it moves directly south, we're not going to be in that game, right? And I truly believe the transit is the key. And we all have rail somewhere that can have a connectivity. So good on you that you've come together on this.
Mayor Wolcott's correct. Signing that agreement and having all the cities sign that agreement is an enormous step.
Yes, it was.
I was a reporter out here in the 80s for the Republic. And I remember in the 5 or 6 years I covered the West Valley as a regular reporter, there must have been 2 or 3 different Grand Avenue studies, to the point where when the third one came along, I didn't even bother to write about it, because all they do is study it, and nothing ever happened because you could not get the cooperation between the cities. But now we've all gone downtown, we all sat in the same room with the MAG representatives, with ADOT, and said, okay, we're going to work to find a mutually agreeable system that we can improve Grand Avenue and make it viable again.
So do you find, I mean, because 2 of the bigger partners besides Surprise and Peoria would be Glendale and Phoenix. Right. Mm-hmm. Do you get the sense they share the same unified vision of what they see Grand Avenue can be?
You know, they're signed on. They're partners. So we all, as he said, we all stood together in the same room and we signed that charter together. So it truly is a big deal when you have the cities of Phoenix, Glendale, Peoria, Surprise, El Mirage, and our agencies all working together on the same unified vision. Do we all know what the big picture will look like at the end of the day? No, of course not. What we want to do is work together and make certain that the character of each neighboring community is respected and the needs of each neighboring community is respected, but it needs to be a coordinated vision. Yeah. And that is, that's a very big deal that we've come this far.
Yeah, there might be some tooth pulling along the way.
Well, I mean, always.
Nothing goes through really easily, obviously, but I mean, it's a matter of working together and cooperating and realizing that if it benefits Glendale, it benefits me, and if it benefits Glendale, it benefits you. If it benefits you, it benefits me. I mean, I think the West Valley has come a long way in terms of understanding and recognizing the interconnectivity amongst us. Just because Maxwell Technologies comes to Peoria doesn't mean all those folks are going to live here. Maybe they'll live there, or they'll live in Surprise.
Is very wide around our West Valley.
So what we have to do, and we have to continually remind ourselves, and to be honest, we really do have to continually remind ourselves that anything that benefits any West Valley city benefits all of us.
No, and I think that, your historical perspective about this has been going on for decades, about trying to study Grand Avenue, knowing that, hey, it's such a big issue, and then also because one of the key parts about the West Valley is the transportation, because there's some areas that are very difficult to get in and out of, and I think it's become more magnified when you see the expansion of the 101, and now with the 303, where you see the ease of being able to move from community to community, and then you see what the historical look of a Grand Avenue, which hasn't really been revitalized to address these issues.
That's another thing that I think that we've all learned as we grow. There's always this tendency to keep moving further and further out where land is cheap and the opportunity is raw and new and fresh and exciting. But then you have a tendency to turn your back on the inner core of the city, and what you can leave behind is blight. And there's no other pretty way of talking about it, just as the mayor of Peoria has said. It's not a pretty thing to leave that kind of thing behind. So rather than turning our back on our past, we need to embrace it, work together, and that's exactly what we've done with this Charter Commission. So I'm really excited about the potential.
So let's talk about timetable. You folks have signed the agreement. What can we expect like in the next year, or who's going to be involved in helping find this unified vision, or where do you see this playing out so that what could we expect in a year from now? What could we expect in a couple of years from now? The MAG Regional Council will be, the MAG itself will be doing the study work on this. We are doing a corridor maximization study, and we're looking broadly, how we can work together and partner. Others of us are working at the local level too, and looking at opportunities on how we might be able to move a commuter rail faster, bring it up to speed faster, show the opportunities that can be created by opening that corridor to commuter rail as well as freight. Right now it's a very underutilized freight corridor, but there are also other transportation components in the West Valley that are very important to the Grand Avenue corridor, and frankly that's the I-11. The I-11 will eventually connect possibly to the Grand Avenue corridor. Whenever you look at how you're trying to move people and being connected with transportation, you ultimately need to find a hub. And probably one of the worst places you could try to stick that at this stage of the game is right downtown, because it's the most expensive right-of-way acquisition that you would have to acquire. But if you were able to find a transportation hub that was able to actually move people and goods and freight
from a satellite further out into the West Valley that can distribute people and goods throughout the valley. That's another opportunity that exists right on the Grand Avenue corridor along the Burlington Northern Santa Fe's property.
Mm-hmm. You'd mentioned historically about Grand Avenue. Let me have you tap into your history again. How do you see the communities working together now as opposed to in the past? Because, I mean, the one thing about the West Valley is that, you know, unlike the East Valley or whatever, there's so many more municipalities, so many more communities of such varied size, trying to get everybody, you know, on the one side of the rope pulling in the right direction has always been a challenge.
I think a lot of it is, some of it is the change in leadership. I think a lot of it is whether you like it or not, you finally recognize that these other folks, I have to work with them in order to get what I want. It's no secret that sometimes when you take something like Grand Avenue, I know the city of Peoria had plans, they were going to fix this and that, and then the overpasses, everybody wanted the overpasses. And this was back in the early 80s, they were talking about the overpasses, and they just finished them.
But was there much out there? Because now you see commercial and expansion of the city, so really we're actually neighboring each other on our commercial expansion. So we really have no other choice than start cooperating and let this happen, because we're becoming kind of one big area out in the West Valley. So it's the direction to go in.
It is the direction. In the past, I think as a reporter, you would go to sit through all the various council meetings, and you would see that they were very focused on themselves. Nobody really had regional kind of looks yet, partly because they didn't all bump into each other like we do now. And that was a big piece of it as well. I mean, you know, the difference between that little where you go under the railroad tracks on Grand Avenue, and there used to be Peoria had an airport right there, and then it turned into a park and swap, and you know it was a mess.
That's quite a transition.
Oh, it was. But then there was a big gap of nothing but farm field before you hit where Glendale had developed, regardless of where the city limit was. So I think what you had here is weren't bumping into each other, so everybody was more egocentric, so to speak.
Right.
But I think now, you know, my border hits. I'm surrounded.
Well, you
except
can
on
have
the
one
north.
foot in one city and one foot in the other.
Well,
right, that's true.
I mean, Peoria is surrounded except to the north, you know, where we go into Yavapai County. I mean, we're one of 5 cities in the state that crosses county lines. But that's it. I mean, the development up there is not going to happen for a very long time. So you have to begin to cooperate and work with each other.
And Mayor Lord, you've seen what the effective transportation, improved transportation can be is on the I-10, because they had taken, you know, a lot of time, but now it's so much better than it was.
And that was a partnership all the way between the 3 cities. And now we have 303. And then we'll be looking at SR 30, which is the I-10 reliever. So a lot of connectivity, and I agree with Sharon. I think I-11, that excites me. When you look at that and where it's coming from and the power of that transportation corridor, I think that's the future. But it is the future because we have the inward fill first in our cities and getting that transportation taken care of. And I want them to do this because we would like to see it come out to our area eventually. So, and we know we need that takes time.
And the one thing you mentioned about bus rapid transit, and if you were able to pull that off or in some phase, I mean, it's got to be so much cheaper than light rail.
Oh, absolutely.
And being able to use the thing more.
It's also not just cheaper than light rail, it's the right mode, because light rail is not the appropriate mode to serve the suburban areas. It really isn't. It's a short run. It's like the milk run. And whereas, and so you have so many very close stops. And so if you were actually trying to create a light rail system, which is very expensive, that was going all of that distance from the suburban areas into downtown Phoenix, you might as well take your lunch, you know, because it's going to be a long, long, long commute. So every time someone asks me, how soon is light rail coming to Surprise, I say never. Because the reality is, it's not coming to Surprise. It will be either commuter rail, bus rapid transit, it will be some other form of transit option that is actually truly a rapid transit. And that's what we really need to look at in our western suburbs.
Oh yeah, we need it desperately out there. We need more transit and more bus service for us.
You mentioned about the needs from the federal government. Other needs to get this going, and what can the public do to help support this effort?
Well, already since actually since the speech on Monday, I've been getting a lot of feedback publicly. As I think the more that the community begins to understand how really large of an accomplishment this is for the Valley communities to be working together in partnership, I think the more the citizens will be cheering us on and saying, yes, that's what we want. We want you all to be working together. We want you to be getting it done. Certainly for my community, which is sort of at the edge, truly at the northwest edge.
She always says she's way out. She always says she's not included.
We're at the
Yes,
edge.
Sharon.
But we are at the edge. But you know, it's been my goal is to get everybody to stop looking inward so much and start looking outward. Look to Goodyear, look to Peoria, look to Glendale, look to all of our neighbors, because they're right there. They truly are a neighbor, and that's a very important partnership in order to try to serve the entire region. So I think that we've got a tremendous opportunity to make big things happen as long as we can keep this momentum going. The public wants it. And if you look at the communities in the Northwest Valley, particularly Sun City West, which are all in the county, they're not cities, and then Surprise, many of the active adult communities were developed intentionally there north of Bell Road in Surprise and along that entire corridor along Bell Road. And now between those two entities, Sun City West, and now the city of Surprise, you have the largest density of senior citizens in the nation is right there. And they need services.
They do.
And they're not all interested in driving anymore. So they do need transit services. And there are also people who would like to engage all of the assets in the region. They would like to go downtown to a ball game. They would like to go to Glendale for a ball game. They would like to go shopping and go to the museums and all of those
Goodyear
things.
now.
And Goodyear as well. And so truly, they want to have all of those things. They want to be connected. And somebody said in a meeting in Washington last week when I was there, they want to be connected to life. And why not? Why shouldn't they? So it truly is all about connectivity for us.
And there's nothing like pressure. If you're asking what can the public do, the public can start to demand these services, demand them of their individual cities, demand them on a regional basis, get the legislature to stop sweeping funds, transit funds, and then get after the federal government as well. I mean, when we look at this, I mean, the legislature isn't doing anybody any favors on this. I mean, if you think transportation is important, we're fighting our state government. Never mind trying to get something from the feds. So if you really care, if you really think transportation is important, let them know, and let them know at the ballot box. There's nothing like pressure. Call them up, send them emails.
So we're talking about the legislature, so that's a good transition. What's your assessment of the session so far? What's the effect been on your communities, and what do you expect the effect on your communities as the legislature carries on to getting ready to adjourn at some juncture?
Oh boy,
Just look at our faces.
Loaded questions.
Yeah.
that is a loaded question.
No,
I think this is probably one of the worst legislatures I've ever seen. I've lived here in Arizona since 1962. I went to work for the Arizona Republic in 1974. This is the worst. I mean, they're talking about putting guns in schools. They're talking about putting guns in public buildings. They're talking about the birther movement. I mean, don't they have anything better to do down there? It's absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, I object to the idea that they are passing laws that are going to control how we run our governments locally. Yeah. And it would be nice if they would come to the cities and have the conversation with them to find out what our needs are, what are the unintentional consequences of some of these statutes that they're passing, because they are affecting our budget. They are affecting our community development. They're putting roadblocks up. They're adding laws that aren't necessary. We have a great number of them in place in community development. And you have to remember, development is going on the west side. Many of those big cities, and where some of those senators and legislators are from, are cities that have infrastructure and transit and airports, and you name it, they have it. We don't. We're just at the beginning of developing that, of growing our cities. So yeah, I'm quite disappointed, and I'm quite disappointed on some very important bills that when you do approach them, they really don't know what the bill says. Have you found that?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you found that? I mean, it concerns me that you're going to put your vote check on that and you don't know what it's totally about.
I perhaps have a perspective that's unique, at least to this table, having served in a legislature before, knowing that it is truly about partnership from the legislative angle to local government, because truly they need to understand how they impact one another. And I've done what I can to try to get down to the legislature and meet with my delegation on specific issues, and I now feel quite comfortable picking up the phone and calling them when I hear of a bill that I think is destructive. I did so just last evening when I heard of a bill that puts caps on solar credits, just as I have a solar company that's ready to expand. This is truly a job killer. Why would the legislature be doing such a silly thing? So again, they're focused on all of the wrong things. They're not focused on partnership. We have tried to do more to try to illuminate the facts with the public. In some cities, what we've done is we've put a legislative bill tracker on our city websites, and it discusses different bills, tells what's going on, and you have an opportunity to contact your legislator directly and oppose or support that bill. And the feedback that we've gotten has been pretty intense from legislative staff who question whether or not our efforts to illuminate the public is really all that necessary.
Oh,
You
wow.
need to make the public aware. I think it's a good job to do that.
So I think it's important.
Because we have a solar industry that is becoming quite viable. And so now they're trying to limit the expansion of it. Do they have another industry they're going to replace it with? Why would you interject yourself when something is becoming a success? So yeah, you do question it, and I you know, in defense, it isn't an easy job, and you know that. It isn't hard. It's hard at a local level, so I understand that. But when you talk about partnering and cooperation and all the things you are always questioning about our cities, well, isn't that part of their responsibility too?
They do need to remember that we do have the same constituents.
And most of them have never been in city government.
Right.
So and I find it interesting because they don't want the federal government telling the states what to do. And you can see many of our bills have been in protest of that. But on the other hand, they just transfer that and they're telling us what to do. So I do question. I mean, I appreciate the long hours they put in, but I do, like the two of you, I question some of the decision making and some of the bills they're bringing forth.
Why do you think there's such a disconnect between, because this isn't the theme just heard in the West Valley. You can go over to the East Valley and they feel the same way, other communities. Why is there such a disconnect between the legislators and the municipal leaders?
They've never been in the local government. There's just a few of them been. Do you agree with this? That when you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, if there was some way that you could force it, I would love to see that you can't run for the legislature unless you've served in a city council at least one term. I like that idea. So that you understand the people you're representing, at least in the large metropolitan areas. Obviously, you know, in small towns or something like that wouldn't be possible. That would be a wonderful thing. I think the problem down there is it's politics, it's party versus party, and what happened. This is my perception. I think what happens is following the party line and getting the party's agenda through is more important than anything else. Right. I mean, the extremes of both parties have kind of taken over the legislature, in my opinion. Whereas it used to be moderate, and they would get together and they would work through the major issues, and then they'd scream and yell at each other on a political level about something that was relatively minor, so everybody realized that we're still playing politics. Well, now that's shifted out. I don't think there's too many moderates surviving anymore. Somebody asked me the other day if I was going to run for the legislature when I was done. I said, I don't think I'd have a chance. They said, yeah, you're probably the last living moderate, Republican moderate. It's crazy down there. It really is crazy down there. And I think their priorities are skewed. They're more important to follow the party line than it is to help your cities. And that's my perception of what's going on down there.
And I think that's absolutely right. I think it's the party, this feeling that you have to have total allegiance to party is truly service to the wrong master. You forget that the true master is the voting public. They are there. They want to see you get things done. Generally speaking, they could care less about the party agenda. And so when I hear party first, district second, it just makes me want to tear my hair out because honestly, that's not the way to get things done. And it's not just, I don't think it's just our legislature. You're seeing this happen across the country. You're seeing it happen in Washington, and it just keeps trickling back to us. And so we're at the very bottom end of that food chain as local elected officials, and we try like heck to try to keep the party politics out of local
Well, we're nonpartisan.
government.
I mean, the fact of the matter, we run on a nonpartisan. And so I'm concerned when they're looking at changing our election dates because I see the trend is they want it partisan, and we're successful at nonpartisan. We work for everybody in the city, and I found when I was at the Conference of Mayors, when we had our a night that the Republicans met and the night the Democrats met, and I spoke up at our Republican group, and I raised my hand and said, you know, it's very hard to be in politics anymore because as a Republican, I'm not allowed to be in the middle. If I'm not far right or far left, you get criticized with people questioning, you're not a Republican. Well, I'm a Republican on my federal side, but on my local side, I care about what happens to the people. I don't call them on the phone and say, are you Republican or Democrat? I call them and say, what do you need? What are we not furnishing for you? Because you pay your taxes for a service, and we want to give you the best service. So that's where I'm at on this.
Yeah, and the date
issue.
change makes a difference. The first time I ran for office was 2001. I ran for the council. At that point in time, Peoria was on the March-May election cycle. So, you know, you start in January, and nobody ever asked me what party I was in. Nobody ever asked my views on gun control or abortion or any of the other national questions. It was, when you talk to people, it was about what happened. Well, then Peoria changed to the, it was September, November, now it's August, September general election system. And as soon as they did that, the next time I ran, party politics came up. At every point when I was running for a re-election on the council, but, you know, are you an R or D? You know, what do you think about abortion? What do you think about gun control? You know, it's like, wait, I'm running for a city council seat. You know, we don't do abortions. We have nothing to do with it. You know, it's.
I noted that in the Phoenix race.
Really
I noted that in the at least the things that I read. It was. I mean, they really came in a partisan way. So
You might have noted that in my race as well.
oh, is that right?
I think there was a little blip.
Just a little blip. But fortunately, I had support from all sides. That was good. But I agree with them. I think that this bill that actually moves the date of elections is really dangerous for local government. It does make a huge difference. It does inject party politics into it. And clearly it's being done for an opportunity to create a farm team, as it were, on local units of government, and then have a slate in the fall. A city like mine, who has an all mail-in ballot, would basically be, we would lose our all mail-in ballot because we would have to be on the county ballot in the fall. And honestly, if you think about that big ballot, when we have regular elections, we have a presidential, and we have statewide elections, we have initiatives, we have judges, we, local elected officials, who have the most direct impact on services to people, are at the very bottom of the ballot where all the drop-off occurs. So people their eyes begin to glaze over when they start reading through initiatives and they start reading through judges, and we're at the bottom of the ballot. You're going to have less people electing your local elected officials if we go, you know, into that system.
Well, one other point, though, you have to remember, in many of our communities, we have senior citizen communities. We have two very large ones in Goodyear. And what happens is many times in these local elections, a winner happens in the primary.
Right.
Sometimes you don't even have to have the other election. But this won't happen now because your senior people are the voters. I mean, we were taught right when we were, you needed to vote. And so consequently, the ballot won't be sent to them. They'll be going off on their getting away from the hot weather in the summertime, and that ballot won't be transferred to them. Yeah. So you can be assured that that vote will be lost.
There's one more undesirable effect of having moved to the August-September system. The debate and the discussion about city issues gets trampled. You know, because you're dealing with the president or the governor, depending on which cycle you're on. You're dealing with Congress. You're dealing with the legislature. You're dealing with the Maricopa County supervisor's race and everything else. And you know, you look at the corner where the signs are, and it's just one mass of signs. And although we touch people the most, and they have most direct contact with this level of government, they don't talk about those. They want to talk about president and whether or not this guy should be president or that guy should be president. And you never quite get down to the point where, is this person really good, and should this person be on the city council, or should this person be mayor?
And then, like Mayor Wolcott mentioned, it being on the, it's all the way down the ballot. So a lot of people, you know, have ballot fatigue and never get to it. I did want to talk to you about another topic, because it's really of a vested interest in all three of your communities. Because when you look at the 15 teams that make up the Cactus League, 6 of them are in your 3 communities. And we'll start with you, Mayor Barrett, because the city of Peoria just announced a $48 million agreement to keep the Padres and the Mariners for another 20 years.
Correct.
How much should communities expect the teams to support their infrastructure when they're here, and how much is really on the burden of the different communities?
Ideally, the team should build the stadium, the team should maintain the stadium, and everything else. That's not going to happen. That's not the way we're structured. The deal with both the Padres and the Mariners, and we're the first city to have 2 teams. We're the first city to retain 2 teams. I might add to that too. It's $48 million over the 20-year agreement. A lot of it is up front, and it is into the clubhouses, so they become as modern and as fully stocked, if you will, as the new stadiums are. Spring training right now brings in about $1.8 million per year in sales taxes that we can estimate. We're going to make improvements around the stadium itself. From Mariners Way to the main entrance of the stadium, that 17-acre parking lot is going to become a development all unto itself. It's going to have a high-rise hotel, ESPN, Lucky Strike bowling, retail sales, and everything else. So the amount of sales tax that's generated from that, in addition to the 1.8 in the surrounding areas, and as those areas also grow, we're going to come out ahead in the 20-year deal in terms of cost. What's good about it? Well, one thing, Major League Baseball representative came over and thanked me. We're bringing a little bit of stabilization into the Cactus League right now. You know, the teams are looking to, all of them are moving around. Everybody wants to go into a new stadium. You know, we all understand that, but that's not viable anymore. You know, I mean, Oakland A's are going to go to where the Cubs were, and as soon as the Cubs stadium is open, I understand that the Brewers want to get out of Maryvale. You know, who else is moving? There's somebody else moving too. But you know, there's a lot of that going around. So for us to suddenly come in and say, okay, this is it, it's good. Now, the other benefit it brings to us, aside from sales tax revenue, is recognition. We have people come from the state of Washington, and I ran into a couple that come down every year for spring training, and they stay the full month. So if the Mariners play in Peoria, you know, they eat in the restaurants there. But if the Mariners play the Cubs, they drive out to Mesa and watch the game. And then those days, was when I first met them, they'd go down to Tucson, you know, when the Rockies were down in Tucson. So it brings in recognition. Now, they go back and they tell their friends about Arizona and about Peoria. So there's a benefit to that you can't put any kind of a number on. You know, how do you put a number on image? You can't do that. You know, but you definitely have to have a positive image as opposed to a negative image.
Yeah. Mayor Lord, you're the newest one to the ball game.
The newest one on the block.
Yeah, with the along with Glendale, with the Ohio teams, both the Cleveland Indians and the Cincinnati Reds. How have you found that having spring training in Goodyear, and how do you see it long term for your community?
Well, first of all, we think it's a real highlight for our citizens. The citizens voted for this, and they wanted this. The citizens certainly didn't want a downturn in our economy, but it happened, right? And we couldn't prevent that. So we've struggled during this period of time, but also for us, we don't have another venue as large as the stadium to bring our citizens together. So it's been wonderful to be able to have all kinds of events all year long. So we keep that stadium busy all year long. And we see, finally, we see some light at the end of the tunnel this year. We're up 30% and over in revenues and in attendance. But you have to think of the effect. We came in sort of at a bad time, really. We came right in at the time the downturn started, or actually it had begun. And so we saw a decline in the number of people traveling from Ohio out to Goodyear. But this year, it was really nice because we started meeting, as you say, walk around the stadium, you start talking to the people, so more people now have come back to traveling. The other thing is that we're being noted for the type of stadium we have, because there's not another stadium, I understand, and I haven't visited them all, so I hope I'm not stepping on your toes.
We'll tell you if you
want. Oh, will you do? Okay. That you feel like part of the, I mean, you're right there on the field. They can see the players because our stadium is built, the bleachers right to the field. So it's a more intimate atmosphere for people. So that's been a real attractor. And you know, we did it, right? And we're going to make it a success. And we're going to have to deal with what the future brings when we have to that. And we're already talking about that. Okay, we need to make a strategic plan to know when that time comes that we have to help refurbish these. We all went into this with our eyes open, right? So there's no saying, we did it, and people are cheering because they love being there. So that's what we'll do, and we'll make this work.
And that's essentially what we do. We said we have a fund set aside for stadium improvements, so that we knew this day was coming, and we've been putting money in.
But I bet you the hotels aren't mad at you, are you? Or
No,
the restaurants?
no, they're absolutely thrilled.
The economic development on the other side, the surrounding side, it's hard to judge. You know, it's hard to give you a figure on it. That's been wonderful for the businessmen, and especially with the downturn in this last year, and all of a sudden they have people eating in the restaurant. There isn't a restaurant in Goodyear that doesn't have a line to get in.
Wow.
It's wonderful.
It really is. And I'm assuming your stadiums will be the same, but our stadium is only unused 45 days a year.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Ours is used around the year.
I mean, it's almost year-round, totally.
Yeah, it is.
Mayor Wolcott, you have two teams, the Texas Rangers and Kansas City Royals. You've talked about a third team that you're interested in. Tell us a little bit more about what you envision of a third team bringing in. Who would you get?
Well, you know, I originally floated that idea last year, and it's not something that I dreamed up. It was actually a staff idea that we talk about the possibility of a third team. And the reason really was when you think about what's going on with the traveling of teams and what's going on with the desire of teams to move to different places that are more up to date. We're looking at what's going on in Florida, and honestly, their stadiums in the Grapefruit League are in pretty tough shape. And so if we were able to attract other teams to Arizona to join the Cactus League, that would be a tremendous asset for the entire state. It would be a good thing. A concern that I have is the knowledge that Las Vegas is looking at possibly building a 4-team stadium model where that they might try to start picking off teams of ours here in Arizona. And that would be problematic because really we have invested a lot in these communities. We have invested a lot in these stadiums, and we have the stadiums. So if whether it's the city of Surprise or another city that has the ability to add an additional team to their stadium by simply adding a clubhouse, that seems like a much better option than possibly losing our teams to another state altogether. So it's much more of a big picture in the future. Keep that idea in front of us, and one that certainly the hoteliers will support because it's more tourism for them. But it's certainly not something that I'm beating the drum to have happen tomorrow. Frankly, I have bigger fish to fry. We also have our own issues with leasing and with our two teams who are very happy. We're celebrating the 10th anniversary of our partnership with the Royals and Rangers this year. Rangers have been doing incredibly well for the last 2 years, as you know, performance-wise. The excitement of their status as champions has been truly amazing to watch. I was just at the stadium again yesterday, and truly it was amazing. It was a game between the Rangers and the Cubs. Well, the place was packed, and that impact locally, again, you cannot put your finger on exactly what that impact is. But we do have We also have the extra added excitement of having Mr. Darvish on the Rangers roster, and he's created an awful lot of excitement in Japan. We know that Surprise is being seen on Japan television every single day during this season, which is a great thing. Again,
well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
We had the day too where Goodyear was shown on that television.
And in addition, and I think that really translates to all of Arizona, truly.
Yeah.
But in addition, we also have the Korean players that play prior to the beginning of spring training. And again, we had an enormous influx of Koreans who came in to watch their teams play. So a lot's going on, and baseball really is a game changer for all of us in our West Valley, and actually in the Valley as a whole, because we're so close together, unlike the Grapefruit League where the teams have a long distance to travel. So if you want to see games in all of our cities, you can do that, and that's a tourism piece for the entire state.
Yeah. Well, the Sarasota mayor showed up at one of our games and had a long conversation with me, so I can tell you that they would love to have kept the teams there, and unfortunately it didn't happen. So by the things she was saying, I was, you kind of say, well, aren't we fortunate? Isn't this good? So
now, it is interesting, though, because one of the things that has changed is the funding formula, because a lot of because before the state used to use a lot of the tourism money in the tourism tax to fund this. Now that money is drying up. How do you see the state in funding spring training baseball going forward?
I talked to the TSA, obviously, because we're in line for money for the refurbishing, and we're okay. But I think your city and I think Glendale is like 2 years late and 50% less or something like that because of the fall off in funding. And what will happen, or at least what I hope will happen, is that as the economy improves now on a national basis, you'll get more tourists back. As you do that, then that sales tax that the TSA collects off the bed tax and the car rental tax will come back in. If that were a healthy operation right now, I would guess that before the end of this decade, we'd have all the baseball teams in Arizona, because if we had the funding. And I think the only way you're going to do that, the TSA is going to sunset, and they need to renew that and extend it because it's too valuable.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with you. They'll have to extend it, and you have to be optimistic about this. And you know, Arizona didn't die during the recession. It just was put on hold, and we're moving, and people are starting to come visit us again. People are starting to spend their money, but I do think we have to be realistic. Each city that has a stadium has to think, okay, now what if this doesn't happen? So we're looking at that, but I do think at a state level that it has to be renewed, and maybe the next plan they could come up might be a little bit more viable and better. So we've learned a lot of lessons in this downturn, so we should use some of those lessons we've learned.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, the idea that you might lose your teams is horrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, now there are
that's
home
why I was
teams.
so glad to get our contracts done.
I don't want to lose our team. You know, they're becoming part of us now.
Oh yeah, and when they renewed, you know, all the merchants along 83rd Avenue around the stadium were just thrilled to death.
Yes.
That, you know, they were afraid the teams were going to go away. There's going to be a problem.
But look at all your expansion because of the team was there.
Absolutely.
Well, and the point that you made, I think, is the key point, that there's such difference between Florida and here, because in Arizona, the teams are so close together. And that's one of the reasons the teams wanted out of Tucson, because, you know, with only 2 or 3 teams down there, you're playing the same teams so often because you don't want to get on a bus and travel up to Phoenix.
Right.
I mean, in Florida, I mean, the teams, I think, get weary because they seem to play the same teams a lot because they don't want to get on a 3.5-hour bus ride to go to the other side of the state. Another topic I want to talk to you about, because in the last forum that we did here, we talked and heard about Mayor Barrett's thoughts on the casino. So we know that Peoria is a strong advocate of the casino. I wanted to get your 2 takes on where your thoughts are for the casino, and if you thought it was a good investment for the West Valley. And I'll start with you, Mayor Wolcott.
Well, first of all, the politics of of tribal casinos is very interesting in Arizona and different from my experience actually in Minnesota, where we dealt with very similar issues, but in a different way because our compacts were different. And I still don't have a full understanding of the Arizona compacts, which I do want to understand. But the fact remains, I understand Mayor Barrett's concern about making sure that we're not passing up on an opportunity to create jobs in the West Valley. That being said, ultimately, whether or not a casino happens or not is not my decision. It's not Bob's decision. It's ultimately going to happen someplace, probably in the courts. And so we are all kind of waiting to see exactly what happens with that initiative. I do understand some of the concerns about the impacts on businesses that are off of tribal lands and how this might set the stage for a growth of casino gaming in the West Valley. But the other side of that is, well, the East Valley has quite a bit of tribal gaming. And as I said earlier, we have a very large density of senior citizens in the West Valley who like to gamble. And so I would frankly rather have them stay here in the West Valley than getting on a bus and driving to a casino in the East Valley.
Have you heard a statistic on that? How many senior citizens are doing this?
Well, I'd invite you to the parking lot at the Sun Dome, and you can watch and you can count for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I was on this panel when you asked
Right.
Mayor Scruggs that, and,
Exactly.
and you know I stayed very neutral on this. I do feel very strongly about cities should be able to make their own decisions and run their business as they would like to, as the citizens have requested it. So I still stand upon that. Now, I read the Indian tribe agreements, and personally, not representing my city, but just on a personal basis, I objected to the way they disregarded their original agreement. And by the original agreement, there was not to be any more casinos out in this area. So because of that, I have personal feelings of how I felt. But I felt it was best to stay out of it and let Glendale and the courts decide what's going to happen. But you know, economic development is always important to all of us, and that's why we've been very pro-Westgate. We don't want them to fail. Tangiers coming in, we said, great, that's going to help them more. You know, our citizens will be shopping there, I'm sure. So,
I'm sorry, I've got to counter what you just said. They did not violate it. There is no verbiage in Proposition 208 that says they cannot have the casino here.
well, supposedly what
Supposedly,
it was.
and what it was,
is-
it's all the comments that are on the ballot.
What I read was that they kind of divvied out where the casinos were going to be. And they
Correct.
made agreements that this tribe would not go into this area.
Show me that
So-
agreement.
Well, I read it, so and that's what it said, and I interpreted it. So I won't argue about it because I don't have any really power in this decision-making of what's going to go on. It's in the courts now, but
Right.
that was my interpretation when I read it.
Okay, 2 points. Number one, the Tohono.
passionate about this, isn't
Yes,
he?
I am. Yes, I am. And I think I got passionate about this when Representative Franks jumped the gun.
Oh, yeah.
And that, up until then, I didn't really have much to say about it. But when you try to short-circuit the legal process, and then I became vocal. And what it is, Tohono are authorized 4 casinos. They currently have 3. And the 1986 Act that put Painted Rock Dam in there allowed them to go buy property to replace. That's what they're doing. You know, and they
Just
did
the area
it.
that they ended up getting was the questionable mark of it.
How was that questionable? It had to be a county island.
Well, it's, you know, I don't need to argue about this one.
Well, if it's wrong, if it's illegal, then why is Franks trying to get a law through to change it?
I don't know, you could answer that question if you'd like.
It's not illegal. That's why he's trying to stop it. But ultimately, the courts will settle it. There's expedited hearing. It'll be in April.
Well, and I guess you have really more attachment because you have some economic development involvement with that because
Directly across the street.
you can do the water for, I mean, you've
Yep.
got a lot of things that your city's going to benefit by that. So I can see you on the bandwagon of trying to make this happen because that's going to affect your city.
Sure.
Okay.
I think it'll affect the West Valley positively in the long run.
I'm sure people, once whatever the decision is made, if it's built, I'm sure people will be using it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of senior citizens.
Yeah.
I've seen these bus trips, and
Well,
they like to go and
coming
gamble.
from that side of the house, I wouldn't say all senior citizens
No,
are
but
doing that.
so. Well, listen, it was great. I think we had a very good discussion. It's great to see the cooperation that's taking place on Grand Avenue. It's nice, as Mayor Barrett said, that finally we're off the study stage, that we're actually signing an agreement, and it's going to be interesting to see what will take place and what the unified vision among all these communities will be. So, and I think it was also interesting your comments regarding spring training, and it's always interesting because sometimes people think the West Valley gets left behind, but in fact with spring training, you folks are leading the way, because 9 of the, if you count Maryvale, 9 of the 15 teams train in the West Valley, and you folks have 6 of them. So I want to appreciate your time. This was a great hour. I always appreciate the insights that you share. My guests have been 3 West Valley mayors: Sharon Wolcott from Surprise, Georgia Lord from Goodyear, and our host, Bob Barrett from Peoria. I want to also thank the great folks here at Peoria City Cable 11 who do such an awesome job when we come out and do these West Valley mayoral forums. I'm Michael Ryan, Vice President and General Manager of the Arizona Republic, and thank you for watching this latest West Valley Mayoral Forum.